Are you and your children planning on reading a lot of books this year? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you some tips how to really get the most out of these books, how to make sure your children are really comprehending and retaining the information. I'm going to be taking tips from my favorite books, the Read Aloud Handbook, Reading Magic, and also the Overnight Student, which is included in the Robinson curriculum, and just kind of applying it to the world that we live in today and how we can get the most out of the books that we read. Whether you homeschool or not, if you just love living books in general, any kind of book, we're going to talk about it in this video, so stay tuned. Hi everybody, my name is Karen. Welcome back to our channel called Our House. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I like to do videos on homeschooling in general, Robinson curriculum in particular, and just family life and encouragement also in general. And we love to read here at Our House, and we follow a curriculum that is kind of based on this literature reading list, this great high quality literature. And it's also independent geared, where they work on their own, they do math on their own, they read on their own, and write an essay on their own, and then you give feedback. But the point is, how can you continue to encourage that independent learning, but also check in and make sure that they're understanding what they're reading and getting the most out of it? So that's what this video is really going to focus on. So let's just jump right in, kind of some of the do's and don'ts. This rule kind of goes for both reading aloud and independent reading, and that's to just have a set time every day where they read for a set amount of time. Or if you're doing the reading aloud, maybe a set amount of chapters, depending on the book. So I like to typically do for the children's independent reading that they read 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the book, of the RC book list, and then maybe another hour of a book that I've approved for them to read. You can mix it up. And also for reading aloud, I have a set time during the day, usually around nap time and then bedtime. And then how much I read, about a chapter or two a day. If it's a difficult book, maybe just one chapter a day. If it's kind of easier, quicker chapters, maybe two. Now, in the past, if a child said, can we just do one more chapter? Can we just read for 20 more minutes? I was always inclined to say yes, because I thought, wow, they love this book. They love reading. Of course, I'm going to encourage them to read more, and I'll read to them more. I would read sometimes 6, 7 chapters at night if they kept asking for it. However, I realized that that was a mistake, and I'll let you know why. We are moving into a culture of binge consumption, binge eating, binge watching, binge reading. It's all over YouTube. It's all over the internet. So you see this phenomenon online where maybe there's a new show that comes on, they release the whole season. It's not like back in the day where it was an episode a week. They release the whole season now. And so people binge watch the entire season. Same with binge eating and also binge reading. There's a lot of booktube channels where they will, binge read for a whole day or a whole weekend. And it's really not the best, healthiest way to go about life, because this is scientifically proven. After a certain amount, you're no longer enjoying or you're no longer absorbing the information. With binge eating, after a certain amount, you're not even enjoying what you're eating anymore. Same with binge watching. After a certain point, you're no longer paying attention. You're not really absorbing anything. You're kind of glazing over it. And same with binge reading. After a certain amount that you read, you kind of start to glaze over. You might get tired and sleepy. You just kind of stop absorbing that information. So binge consumption, it's not really good, and we're not doing our children any favors by continuing to read more chapters or letting them neglect other things in the house, in life, to just bury themselves in a book. I mean, it sounds great, but it's really not productive. So just setting aside some time, and that's it. When the window's over, the window's over. And it's okay to wait for the next day, to build up that anticipation. They will want to read more. And that's definitely some of the tips that I've gotten from here too, is to end on a suspenseful note, a cliffhanger. Maybe if the chapter doesn't end on it, look for one in the next chapter and stop there. So you do kind of whet that appetite for them to want to read the next day. But again, it's not healthy to just give into that and give into that. We're seeing it in the world around us, in our country today. It's not a good thing. It's not healthy. The next thing is to, before your child starts to read their portion of the day, is to do a little bit of a review where you were before. Maybe you had a gap or a weekend or something come up where they haven't been reading consecutively. So that little refresher is good instead of just being kind of thrown back into the book, especially if it's a kind of more difficult book, you know, like some of the G.A. Henty books. You kind of want a little bit of that refresher. I mean, you see it on TV shows, you know, last week, you know, blah, 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 or in the last season, this is what happened. So do the same thing with books. Help your child, just ask them, okay, what happened in the last chapter before they start reading it. Same thing when I do a read aloud book. I always say, okay, where were we at? What happened in the last chapter? And everybody just kind of fills in little things that happened. And then we say, all right, well, let's see what happened. Another really important tip that I'd like to leave you with is to have the child narrate what they just read. And this is kind of a mixture with the Overnight Student. If you're not familiar with that book, I also recommend it. It's just a very short book. And it talks about how you really understand and soak up information that you yourself repeat. You yourself are teaching, even if it's just to stuffed animals, whatever information you have, you're just repeating it to, you know, other people or stuffed bears, whatever. That's how you're really going to retain the information. And this also even works with math problems. A lot of Robinson curriculum parents, I notice, do this, where if a child, and I do it too, if a child can't understand a problem, just ask them to read it out loud. Ask them to read it out loud in another room. And more times than not, they will immediately recognize what their error was just by reading it out loud. So same thing with books. You want them to, after they're done, just kind of tell you what happened, not give you their opinion of what happened or how they felt about it, what they thought about it. That comes after. Just narrating, this is what happened, and this is what happened, just the facts, just what happened in the book. And the reason for that is, again, you just want them to really understand the facts, really understand the book before they give their opinion on it. And this is really going to help them in life. Just this little exercise. Not only do you get that satisfaction of knowing that, okay, they're understanding what they're reading, they are learning. This is going to help them as they grow older, as if they maybe do higher learning, to be able to absorb more and tougher material. This is also going to help them in other areas such as politics, government, civics, where they can just removing their opinions or their feelings or their emotions, just be able to take information in and really understand what it is that they're hearing. This is also going to help them in marriage when they can really just hear what the other person is saying and be able to repeat that without just hearing information, hearing something said to them, and then them going off on their emotion, their thoughts about it, their opinions on it. No, just being able to take another person's point of view, another person's statements, and being able to just recite them is really going to help them in life, to not just hear something and then right away react. So that's a great way to start that lifelong habit, is by just narrating what they just read. Again, not telling you how they felt about it, their opinion. No, just narrating what happened. And then later you can have that conversation of, well, what did you think about it? How do you view that? Another thing too is to not wait until the end of the book to do that, because by the time you get to the end of the book, you're already forgetting some of the things in the beginning of the book. Nobody really likes doing a book test or a book report at the end of the book. You like to do book clubs because, you know, you're discussing the book without taking a test, right? Or during the club. Well, you don't want to wait to the end. I recommend after each reading, if you're doing the Robinson curriculum or with your homeschooling, you're reading living books every day. Each day, the child does a narration for what they read. And maybe they could do it to the whole family. You could set this up. I like to do maybe like a tea time where everybody shares about what they read. Narration and then their opinions, and then we discuss it. Or it could be just as easy as you doing dishes and they're, you know, telling you what they read that day. You're doing the laundry. They're helping you with the laundry, and they're just you don't have to make it a big deal. You don't have to make it a big to-do. You don't have to schedule it if you're really busy. Just in a natural way, you're doing the dishes, you're doing laundry, and they're helping you, and they're telling you about what they read. So again, I recommend you do that every single day after your daily portion reading, their daily portion reading, instead of waiting until the very end of the book. That's not really going to help. All right, everybody, that's it for this video. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Share with anybody that might be struggling with living books, literature-based learning. I know a lot of parents get frustrated and think this isn't working. They're goofing off. They're not reading. You know, it's just about holding them accountable. If they know that they have to give you a narration at the end of their reading time, they're gonna do the reading. Pre-reading is gonna help, as well as knowing that there is a definite ending time to that reading, to the read aloud. Again, I highly recommend these books. Reading Magic by Mem Fox. This book goes over, you know, why reading aloud to our children will change their lives forever, and how just reading aloud to your children can even get them on the right path to learning how to read really quickly. Lots of great stories in here. Read Aloud Handbook is also just amazing, amazing, amazing. And this inspired the book from Sarah McKinsey, which is the Read Aloud Family. I recommend that as well. But this one is just a lot thicker. It has a ginormous reading list in the back. It's getting harder out there at the libraries to find quality books. You really need to treat it like a grocery list and writing down the ingredients, writing down the book titles, and then either reserving them on the catalog online or looking up the numbers ahead of time and just going there to pick them out. So these books give a great book list in the back with a lot of and describing the titles, what the book is about. And the Overnight Student, again, that will really help you with not just reading, but anything that you're trying to learn, especially math. This was a college dropout. I think he dropped out. He failed so many times, and then he applied these methods and then came back and was a straight A student. It's incredible. So I'll put a link to that in the description below. All these books, I'll put a link in the description below. And if you have any other tips for how to get the most out of your books, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to read them. I read all the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.